I rented an Airbnb and never checked out. The Airbnb. I thought I was escaping from the noise, the chaos, the never-ending grind of life. A weekend getaway, a chance to breathe again. That's how it started. I needed a break, a cabin in the woods, solitude. A simple Airbnb that promised everything I needed, quiet, comfort, and peace. But from the moment I pulled up, I felt it. The air was wrong. It was thick, suffocating even. The trees around the cabin weren't like the ones I'd seen on my drive here. These were twisted, gnarled, their branches stretching out like long, skeletal fingers, reaching for something they couldn't quite grasp. It looked like a place that had been forgotten, abandoned by time itself. I told myself it was just the isolation. I was alone, no other cars, no signs of life, just this cabin. A place that would soon become my prison. As I entered the house, the first thing I noticed was the smell. Musty. Like something ancient had been rotting inside the walls for years. The windows were tightly shut, blocking any fresh air. I checked the thermostat, no response. The house wasn't just old, it was dead. But I told myself to relax, that I was being paranoid. After all, it was just a cabin. The host had been prompt, kind even. The reviews on the listing seemed positive, though something about them felt staged. There was something off about the way they described the place, but I pushed the thought away. I wandered inside, the floors creaking beneath my feet, each step making the silence feel even more oppressive. The furniture was old but in decent shape, the kind of vintage pieces you'd find in a second-hand store. But there was no warmth in this place. No charm. Just emptiness. I unpacked my things, took a shower, and sat down to relax. But the longer I stayed, the more I felt something pressing against me. It was like I wasn't alone. There was something. Not in a physical sense, but more like a presence. Something watching me, waiting for something. My eyes darted around the room, every corner felt darker than it should have been. I tried to ignore it. I convinced myself it was nothing. That night, the wind howled. The sound was deafening, as if it were trying to rip the house apart. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I felt something brushing against my skin. My body froze. Every small noise became amplified, scratching sounds like something moving in the walls. Or was it in my head? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I checked the windows, locked. The door locked. But still, that unsettling sensation lingered. I thought about leaving. I really did. But I was too tired to drive back. The sense of dread didn't help, but the exhaustion won. I lay in bed, under the thick blankets, trying to ignore the whispers I was sure I heard coming from somewhere deep within the cabin. The next morning, I decided to go for a walk to clear my head. The moment I stepped outside, the air felt colder, even though the sun was high. The woods surrounding the cabin looked different now, darker, more oppressive. It felt like they were closing in on me, and the silence was deafening. I shouldn't have gone too far, but something in me urged me to move forward. That's when I found it. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, an old, dilapidated building hidden among the trees just beyond the reach of the cabin. I walked closer. It was a stone structure, ancient, covered in vines and dirt. It looked like it had been there for centuries, forgotten by everyone. There were no windows, only an archway that led into a deep, black void. I hesitated. My mind screamed at me to turn back, but my feet moved forward on their own. I stepped inside, and the air turned foul, the darkness thicker here than anywhere else. My breath quickened. I was not alone. The whispering began, low at first, then louder. And then I saw it. A shadow far in the corner. It wasn't human. No, not even close. It was something darker, something that should never have been seen. It moved, its form shifting like liquid darkness, stretching, reaching for me. I stumbled back, heart racing, lungs burning, but the darkness was already closing in. I couldn't see. I couldn't breathe. And then something grabbed my leg. I screamed, but the world around me swallowed the sound. Everything was silent. So, it was there. Whatever it was. And it was waiting for me. Subscribe to the channel if you want to hear the rest of the story. But beware. Once you know what happened to me, you may never be alone again. You may never sleep again. The awakening. I don't remember how I escaped the darkness of that stone building. It was as if I had been pulled out of some deep void and thrown back into the light. I was back at the cabin, but it wasn't the same place I had entered hours ago. The walls seemed to pulse, to breathe as if they were alive. The air was thick with a damp, sickening warmth, and the once muted whispers now echoed through every corner of the room. I stumbled through the house, unable to tell if I was awake or still trapped in some nightmare. My legs felt heavy, like they weren't my own, dragging me through the house as if I was tethered to something unseen. I wanted to run, to leave it all behind, but the door wouldn't open. It wasn't locked, it simply refused to let me out. I turned to the windows, but all I saw was that same blackness. The trees outside, the land, everything was consumed by the void. It wasn't night. It wasn't day. It was just empty. Suddenly, a sound pierced the silence. A soft tapping at the door. It was faint, rhythmic. Not a knock. It was something far more sinister. It felt like a countdown, like something was preparing to enter. And then the whispering came again, louder this time, clearer. "Join us," it said, the voice smooth like silk wrapping around my thoughts. "We are waiting. We are always waiting." I froze. I knew that voice. The voice from the building, from the shadows. It wasn't human. It wasn't anything that should exist. I backed away from the door, heart hammering in my chest. The walls began to bend, shifting like liquid, warping around me. I pressed my hand against one of the walls and it gave way, the surface soft and pulsing like flesh. I yanked my hand back, gasping. What was this place? What was I really trapped in? And then I saw it. In the corner of the room, in the dim light of the cabin, the shadows moved, slowly, deliberately. The figure emerged, a shape so twisted, so wrong that my mind could barely comprehend it. It had no face, no eyes, just a mouth that stretched unnaturally wide, full of sharp, jagged teeth that glistened like knives. I couldn't move. My body wouldn't obey me. I was paralyzed with terror, locked in place as the creature slowly advanced toward me. But it wasn't the creature itself that terrified me the most. It was the awareness I felt. The unmistakable feeling that it knew me, that it had been watching me the entire time. It knew everything. My thoughts, my fears, my deepest regrets. "You should never have come here," it whispered, its voice like dry leaves scraping against a wall. "But now you're one of us. You're never leaving." The room spun around me. I could hear the whispers growing louder, more frantic. "Join us. Join us. Join us." The shadows began to distort, pulling themselves together into a massive, undulating mass. It was everywhere now, crawling across the walls, the floor, the ceiling, until it consumed everything in sight. There was no escape. There never was. I could feel it now. The presence. It was inside me, crawling beneath my skin. It was part of me. It was in my veins, in my blood. I wasn't the person who walked into this cabin anymore. I was something else. I was one of them. And then the door opened. I didn't hear it, didn't see it. One moment it was there, and the next it was gone. But outside the door I saw it, the forest. The twisted trees, the gnarled roots, the thing that had been waiting. It called to me, beckoning me into the void. But I couldn't move. Something was pulling me back, pulling me into the nightmare I had created. "Don't you see?" the creature hissed, its voice now inside my head. "It was always going to be you. You walked into our world and now you belong here. You will never leave." I tried to scream, but the words died in my throat. The shadows stretched out, wrapping around me like chains, pulling me toward the door. And then everything went black. The nightmare wasn't over. As you sit here hearing the story, you're no longer just a listener. Something is watching. Something has noticed you. It's waiting for you and you don't even know it yet. Do you feel it? The shift in the air? The whispers that follow you when you close your eyes? It's too late now. You're part of the story. And you can never escape. Subscribe for more. But remember, once you've heard the truth, there's no going back. The terror has only just begun.